Good morning, everybody. Welcome to DIY Data with Alteryx and Designer Cloud. My name is Paul Warburg. I'll be your host today. I'm a senior product marketing manager at Alteryx, and today we're going to be talking about how anyone can work with Snowflake data without writing code. And that includes technical people who already know how to write code and just don't want to or want to be a little more efficient. And it also includes people who have never known how to write code and never plan on learning how to write code. For those of you that are new to DIY data, this is a regular webcast from Alteryx where we show practical tips and tricks about how to prepare data and build end-to-end data products. So it's all about hands-on exercises and showcasing some practical use cases that we hope will be useful to you and help you to level up your data workflows. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about really how to make the most of your unused data in Snowflake. We'll be walking you through some tools you can use to allow anybody, including those non-technical business users that I talked about earlier, to leverage your existing data. And really the goal is to uncover a treasure trove of insights that might be waiting to be discovered. And hopefully that could make a massive impact on your business, but haven't yet because they're still sitting there in your database. We'll cover things like how to connect to data from Snowflake, how to build simple transformations without having to write any code, and how to use the power of Snowflake processing in an ELT fashion to transform large volumes of data very quickly and very cost efficiently. So let's get started, and let's start by taking a look at a scenario that a lot of Snowflake users and really a lot of data teams in general find themselves in, or at least might be actively trying to avoid. What we see here on this slide on the left is this army of data engineers or technical IT resources serving a relatively small number of end users and data consumers. And that's pretty expensive, and it's pretty top-heavy, resource-intensive data structure. And really, it's a picture of the fact that even though becoming a data-driven organization is straightforward in concept, it can be a lot more complicated in reality when it comes to implementation and execution. There are complex processes, complex languages, and complex technologies that stand between data and its end users. And these are all things that end users don't understand and might need technical help in order to make data accessible to them. One way to describe this is as an analytics gap. Really, that's a wedge between the technical skills of IT and central analytics teams and the business or domain knowledge of line of business teams, which is often quite specialized, especially in certain fields like, electrical grid or oil or things like that. And so IT is focused on how to get the data to people, and the line of business is focused on how to action and utilize that data. But because there's these different centers of knowledge, the process often gets really bogged down. And we find either the line of business needs so much help that IT cannot keep up with their demands, no matter how many resources they have, or maybe the domain knowledge of the line of business is so specific that up to 80% of the analytics is literally just this back and forth iteration between the line of business and IT, trying to get the data pipeline built correctly, trying to get requirements communicated and delivered accurately. And so again, this gap often results in this bringing up an army of data engineers and IT resources who start to accumulate as organizations try to get data to end users in a timely manner. And really modernization efforts, a reason a lot of people buy Snowflake and tools that work with Snowflake, these modernization efforts are essentially a new approach to the same old problem, but instead of trying to add more resources to the IT side of the equation, modernization efforts are focused on getting fully managed technologies that empower self-service at the business level so that there could be more utilization of data without overburdening IT resources, which again are expensive and also just difficult to acquire, even if you have the budget for them. Organizations that manage to accomplish this will often see a massive increase in the utilization of their data and the number of data products that they can build, all with a comparatively insignificant increase in costs or usually a net reduction in costs because of the ability to offload a lot of this onto the business. And so that's the background for our discussion today. What we'll spend the rest of our time doing is taking a look at a solution that makes this possible. This is just a quick overview of the architecture we're looking at. As you can see, we're looking at an ELT solution today that works with data that comes either from external data sources or Snowflake or both. And then it can build SQL-based transformation logic that's executed using Snowflake's engine, which allows for unlimited scale and really good cost efficiency. So what I'll be showing is Designer Cloud from Alteryx, which is essentially a way for business users, it's a tool business users can use to build this SQL-based transformation logic without actually writing the SQL or going to IT and having them write the SQL for them, or really any other data pipelining language. So that anyone, even if they're not technical at all, can do this sort of end-to-end ELT process. As you'll see today, what I'll show you, there's going to be two ways to accomplish this, and it really depends on the preference of the user. One is sort of a canvas-like experience that's got these drag and drop tools that are kind of pre-built with some logic in them. And the other is a grid-like experience, and it's particularly user-friendly to people who are used to working with spreadsheets, which is probably the majority of business users who are actually working with data today. So without further ado, I'm going to fire up this first demo instance, and just to avoid any potential bandwidth issues, I'm going to turn off my camera. Now I'll share my screen. And in this first demo instance, I want to start with our canvas-like experience. In this instance, I've already connected to some Snowflake data, but if I wasn't already connected, I could easily go in. Once the connection is built to Snowflake, and I can choose my data set, and I can easily select the individual table that I want to adjust. In this case, like I said, I've already connected to some Snowflake data here. And really what we're going to show you is a drag and drop experience where I can drag different data steps onto this canvas, which will all do different things. And it's a visual experience that allows me to see step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. I can see how my data is flowing and what's happening to it at individual stages, which is a lot more visual than writing code, and it's a lot more intuitive. So let me delete these steps so I can show you an actual example. So it doesn't want to get deleted. Here we go. So let me start here. When I click this button on the right, what I'm seeing here is a sample of my data. What this is whether I have 1,000,000 rows or 1,000 rows, I can pull a subset of my data that allows me to see changes in real time without having to execute all of the transformation logic. It just makes things a lot more snappy. I can see if I'm doing things correctly, which is super, super important for a business user who doesn't know how to write code, and they kind of need to understand and ensure that they're doing things the right way. Another thing I can do in here is I can turn on what we call data profiling. I'll just let that load up for a second. And what this data profiling is going to do is it's going to show the distribution and the type and the format of our data. So I can see I have 50% clicks, 50% views. This is particularly useful maybe if there's broken records or things like that, just to get a quick overview of what my data looks like so that I can figure out maybe what I want to transform. I'm going to go ahead and turn this off. It looks like I have some cleansing I need to do of this data. And so in order to do that, let's say I'm trying to build a dashboard. I'm a data analyst, and I connect to the raw data, and it's not working because there's broken records, there's missing records, whatever. In this experience, all I have to do is pull out this data cleansing tool, select to remove null rows, and it's also going to check for, just extra characters and things like that. And so not writing a complex string. I'm not trying to figure out what I need to cleanse or whatever. I just pull tool onto the canvas, and that cleansing is done for me. Now let's do something super simple. Let's say I want to sort this data. Just pull that onto the canvas after the cleanse. And say I want to sort it by my event type. which if I go and I look, I have views and clicks. Let's say I want to sort that in ascending order. When I click after the sorting step, I'll see, okay, now my data has been sorted. Now, sorting is a pretty simple operation to do, but the beauty of this, as opposed to something like Excel, is I can execute my sort after doing particular transforms or before doing particular transforms, and I can visually see exactly when that has happened. In this case, I don't think I want to sort. I think I actually want to filter. Maybe I want to just work with my clicks, or I just want to work with my views. So looking at my data, I have a few options. I have clicks and views. Let's see if I didn't set this up properly, so I just need to put, I'm going to filter on clicks. Now my true value shows me if all my data that matches clicks in the event type column. My false shows me everything else, which in this case is just views. So the nice thing is I filtered my data, but I actually haven't gotten rid of anything. And so let's say I wanted to do additional steps on different subsets of this. Let's say I wanted to join my clicks to one data set, and I wanted to join my views to a different data set. Sorry, I did that incorrectly as I dragged that in. There we go. I could do that. Now, I don't have any data to join to, but again, this is just a very visual way for me as a non-technical expert to come in, do some things that might otherwise take me quite a bit of time, and I can visually build out pretty complex logic as I go through this, doing pretty complex things, getting my data in the exact shape that I want. So that's a pretty simple, there's a lot of tools here. I'm not going to go through every single tool. I don't want to bore you. That's kind of the idea. When I'm done, whatever my transformation steps are, it's pretty easy for me to build an output. I can override an existing table, which of course, depending on user permissions, or I can write a new table. In this case, I'm just going to write a new table. I'm going to call it advertising clickstream done. That'll work. That's confirmed, and then I'll just run the job. It's going to push down that processing to Snowflake. It's going to do all the processing, spin up, scale up or down as needed. So I don't have to worry about that. It's fully managed. And just like that, now I've got stuff. I can build a dashboard super easily. So that was a super simple example. I want to show you another way to do this with a completely different experience. This is another way to use Designer Cloud. It's the same product, meaning it's got the same cloud infrastructure. It can sit in the same place on top of Snowflake data, and it can use the power of Snowflake to process that data. As you can see here, I'm already connected to a Snowflake data set, but if I wanted to, I could also connect to a huge number of other data sets. There's tons of connectors in here that I could choose from, whatever my data sources are. I'm going to cancel that out. And basically, whatever data sets I were to put in, if my end destination is Snowflake, it's going to do ELT. So it's going to load all the data from these other data sources into Snowflake before executing these transformation steps. Again, that's just going to be super cost efficient, and it's going to allow me to build complex flows while leveraging the power of Snowflake to execute transformations. In this case, I'm already connected. This is the overall flow view, and the way this works is it's a little bit different. I don't have these drag and drop recipes that are kind of pre-built. What I have is different steps, and I can do joins and things like that. Different steps with individual recipes, excuse me. And within individual recipes, I have this sort of spreadsheet-like experience. But the cool thing about this spreadsheet-like experience is it's not like a normal spreadsheet. I can interact directly with my data. I can just highlight things. For example, here I've highlighted a year, and Designer Cloud is going to use machine learning to figure out what am I probably trying to do. Here I've selected the year column, and so it's automatically figured out, oh, he just wants to extract the years so he can analyze those separately. That's exactly what I want. I can just click add. I can do similar things with pretty complex strings. So for example, in URLs, I can just highlight a domain, and just like that, I have a suggestion. Okay, let's extract the domain from all of these URLs. Key thing to note here is it's interactive. So as a business user, I don't have to have any knowledge of code. I don't even have to know what I'm trying to do. I can get in, I can look at a sample of my data directly without pulling the entire database. I can go in, I can click around, I can highlight things. Like let's say, oh, there's user IDs. I'm kind of curious. I want to analyze by user ID specifically, but not the last characters for whatever reason. I can extract that. I can split into different columns. And what's going on is every time I highlight any text here in Designer Cloud, in this grid experience, I'm getting some machine learning guided suggestions, and these learn based off my own behavior with the application. And I can just click through these, and it's going to figure out what am I most likely trying to accomplish. I can see a preview of what it looks like, and then I can apply it in basically no time at all. So the key is I don't need to know a single thing about writing data transformations. All I have to do is see the data, highlight it, get a machine learning powered suggestion, and add it to my recipe. I could move these around at any time as well, similar to kind of what we were looking at in the other experience. I have visibility into what's going on, what has happened when, so I can go back and I can make changes and I can fix things without getting committed to a process. I could also look at this detailed data profiling on the top, similar to before, distribution, type, and format. I can also easily see if there's any mismatch, missing values, any errors, and easily clean up my data set. So if I'm a business user and I'm just trying to get a clean data set to build a dashboard so that I can do some further analysis and think it through on my own, I don't have to go to IT and ask them to build a pipeline, clean up my data for me. I can do that myself, and it literally just takes a couple of minutes. There's a lot of other things I could show you guys in here. The point here today was just to show you how easy it is. I do recommend you reach out and get a full demo of either experience I've shown here today if you're interested. First experience is not quite available yet, but it will be in about a month. And that way, if there's anything in particular you're trying to accomplish at your organization, you can get a full picture of what's possible. You could also try this out for yourself with a free trial. Just follow the buttons on Alteryx.com. In both cases we've shown it's possible for someone who's not technical to make use of your data in Snowflake. Not only is it possible, there's a couple different options to do that. I want to close out by also kind of connecting this back to the Snowflake Marketplace, because I've been talking a lot about data that exists already in your warehouses that's not being used, and that's excellent. What's also excellent is all of this data that it's super easy to get into your Snowflake warehouse for people to do analysis, both free and paid. And when I start thinking about the possibilities of putting these kinds of data transformation tools in the power of everyday people, not only with the data that you have that's proprietary in your business, but also this other types of data, public facing or whatever, there's tons of data here in the Snowflake Marketplace. The possibilities for new breakthroughs are really awesome. And there's tons of insights that are just waiting to be unlocked. So that said, that's going to conclude today's demos. I'm going to go back on camera and I'm going to check the chat here. It looks like we've had some questions come through. Quite a few questions. So give me a moment. Let me open that up, and I'll answer as many as I can in the remaining time we have. It looks like we were having a problem with the slides at the beginning. I do apologize. Maybe after this, I'll go ahead and I'll share the deck with you guys. I'm not sure what the issue was there. It looks like you were able to see my screen while I shared it, though. Okay, so the first question was, are these in database transformations? I think I answered that later on, but just in case that wasn't answered for you, yeah, that was absolutely in database transformations. We're processing that through the Snowflake pushdown processing. Can you view the SQL queries being generated under the covers? Yes, you can. There is a way. There might be a way in the Canvas experience I showed. I'm not positive. I'm not a complete expert on that one. There's definitely a way in that trifecta grid experience to see the SQL queries under the covers. And in some cases, you can even adjust those before running them. Brilliant to extract domain without resorting to formulas in Excel or worse. I completely agree. Super complex to do that in SQL. Trying to figure out formulas or counting string numbers. Perfect. Any way I can change source? Is there any way I can change the source or target memory parameters for large volumes of data polling for performance? That question might be a bit too technical for me. But I believe, there's different ways when you are adjusting. I want to say yes, but I don't want to misspeak. So maybe I'll have an SE follow up with you on that one. What was exactly done in the data cleansing step? So it totally depends on what data is going on there, but what it's going to do is it's for sure going to remove null values, and it's going to check for extra characters, things like that, things that might corrupt individual records, and it's pretty clear to the machine based on the other records that that character is not supposed to be there, that kind of thing. Does Alteryx do ELT push down to Snowflake? I think I answered that, but in case I wasn't clear, yes, it does. Can the product push down to other SQL engines? It can. There is push down available for BigQuery. In a way, there's push down available for Databricks as well. But if you talk to an SE, they can help clarify those questions specifically for you. In this layer, the actual source data does not change, correct? That's correct. When I'm working with the data that I've shown in both instances, this is a sample of data that's been pulled into the product. So the source data hasn't been changed, it's just pulled a small subset. Then I work on that sample. Changes wouldn't be done to the source data unless I executed that step and I chose to overwrite the source data. But unless I do that, the source data remains intact. If I choose to publish to a new data source or create a new table, the source data remains intact. How do I avoid egress cost in Snowflake while using Alteryx? So if you use Designer Cloud, there should be no egress costs. Designer Cloud can do the full push down in Snowflake. So that might be something worth looking into if you're incurring significant egress costs. Can you choose ELT or ETL? Absolutely, yeah. It totally depends on your needs, but these products can handle both of those. Okay, that was a lot of questions. Oh, another one just came in. Where can I learn more about creating tables in Snowflake in our own databases there? It's a good question. I'm not 100% sure what the full question is, but when you create a new, when you're looking at your Snowflake tables in Designer Cloud, it's very similar to the view you see in Snowflake itself. And so if you choose to create a new table, it's going to create a new table in the database or the warehouse that you've connected to, and it'll create the new table with whatever name you specify in the product, and that should just show up in the Snowflake backend. If you have any specific questions or concerns about what's happening when you create a Snowflake table, I recommend you talk to an SE. What is required from scaling what is required to scale Alteryx Cloud? Does it require any memory to operate? So there's two ways to execute. You can execute using the in-memory engine within Designer Cloud, and that will it's basically just browser-based in-memory engine, right? So it's not going to scale very far. To scale with Snowflake, it's automatically going to do that if you're pushing to Snowflake or any other data source that we do SQL pushdown or any pushdown to. It'll automatically scale with the provider that you're using. And so there's not really a bunch of setup you need to use. It'll just automatically scale up and down depending on the parameters you set for usage within there. Snowpark support. It's a good question. I don't personally know the answer to that. We can dig into that and follow up with you. Does hosted Alteryx do push down to Snowflake? So I think you're referring to a self-managed instance, and it can. So you just want to talk to your SE about specifics, but I know that it can. I'll just share too some specifics. This is Snowflake on AWS. To use Designer Cloud, the software needs to be hosted in AWS. But if you're using Snowflake, if you have data in Azure, you can do full Snowflake pushdown and access that Azure data and read and write. But the software has to be hosted in AWS or GCP right now. Tons of great questions. I'm just double checking to make sure I didn't miss any. All right, it looks like we covered most of them. If I missed any questions, I apologize. We'll look through the chat and we'll try to follow up. This concludes our episode of DIY Data, though. Oh, I just got another question. Is it SaaS? Yes, it is. There's SaaS and self-managed available. So it just totally depends on your needs. Thank you guys for all the great questions. Hope you enjoyed it. Try out a free trial. Let us know what you think.